Part 2, Imperator. Chapter 1, The Festival of Lights. Over the temple and housetops of Jerusalem, over its smoking altar and its Mount of Zion, a red winter sun was slowly sinking. Much too slowly, it seemed to the two children who were watching that December afternoon from the palace of their grandfather, the high priest, Hyrcanus. Mariamne, a very beautiful little girl of 11 or 12, stood quietly leaning against the window frame, her long lashes and heavy dark curls turned to red bronze in the sunlight. Aristobulus, who was 9 and more impatient than his sister, kept turning in his hands a small unlighted torch and wondering aloud if tomorrow was never going to come. Half an hour or more the two royal children had been watching and waiting for the sun to disappear behind the dark edge of the city wall and let the new day begin. For each new day began not at midnight but at sundown in Jerusalem. And tomorrow was a festival, the beginning of Hannukah, always in December. While the Romans were celebrating the Saturnalia, the Hannukah, or Festival of Lights, was being celebrated by the Jews. At sundown, as soon as it was dusk, the first one of the 8 lamps would be lighted in the Hannukah lampstand. That was what Aristobulus was waiting for. The next evening they would light 2 lamps instead of 1. The next 3, and so on, until on the last day all of the 8 branches of the Hannukah lampstand would be ablaze with light. Light would be shining out from all the houses in Jerusalem. The sacred gold lampstand in the temple had only 7 branches, like the 7 days of the week, or the 7 planets in the sky. But the Hannukah lampstand had 8 lights in memory of the miracle. According to a legend, which Mariamne and Aristobulus never tired of hearing repeated, a miracle had taken place in the temple in the days of one of their early ancestors, Judas Maccabeus. It had been on a December day about 100 years ago, when the Greeks, instead of the Romans, had ruled over Palestine. The temple, after being long misused by the Greeks for the worship of one of their many gods, had just been won back again by the Jews and was about to be rededicated to Yahweh, the one and only God of Israel. Everything was ready. The altar had been cleansed and purified. New golden basins had been provided to catch the blood of the lambs waiting to be sacrificed. The 12 loaves of unleavened bread had been laid on the table in the holy place. And there, too, once more, standing like the tree of life, was the great sacred lamp, or candlestick, with its 7 branches. It had only to be filled and lighted. Then, to the dismay of the priests, no pure lamp oil could be found. A frantic search unearthed but one small dusty jar, containing only enough sacred oil to last a single day. But with it the 7 cups were filled and lighted. The next day, to the amazement of the priest, it was still burning. And the next. For 8 days, it was said, the oil continued to burn. In joy, then, and thanksgiving, Judas Maccabeus had decreed that every year for 8 days the miracle should be commemorated with a solemn festival of joy and thanksgiving. For 8 days, therefore, this year, as every year, while the Hannukah lights were burning, the temple walls would resound with the singing of psalms, in their chorus of Hallelujah, or praise to Yahweh, the God of Israel. Judas Maccabeus was the great hero who had defeated the Greeks and won back the temple. He was an ancestor in whom the 2 royal children felt great pride, though just how they were related to him, Aristobulus could never remember. He knew only that they too were Maccabeans, and that since the days of Judas Maccabeus, all the high priests had belonged to the Maccabean family. Judas Maccabeus, Mariamne explained to him again, had 4 brothers. One of them was the great-great-grandfather of our grandfather Hyrcanus. And all those grandfathers have been high priests, said Aristobulus. Some day, do you think, there may be another high priest strong enough to fight and drive the Romans out, the same way Judas Maccabeus drove away the Greeks? Judas Maccabeus, he said thoughtfully. I can spell that name. Diverted for a moment from his vigil, the boy laid down the small torch and slowly traced the name of his brave ancestor in Hebrew characters on the dusty windowsill. Then he looked up, and he saw that suddenly, while he wasn't watching, the sun had dropped below the western horizon, and it was tomorrow. It was Hannukah, the first day in the Festival of Lights.